The other day I asked a question about whether or not Rishi was too nice to be of value in present day politics, and some of the comments are so aggressive, and you end up with the conclusion, yes, Rishi is too nice because everybody else is too horrible. And I thought it would be interesting to go back to something that both Mrs. Thatcher and Jeremy Corbyn and who's the other person now? Martin Luther King. They all invoked the image of the Good Samaritan, all in different ways. Jeremy Corbyn said that he wants us to be like he wants us to be a society that doesn't pass on the other side of the road from those who've been rejected by an unfair welfare system. Well, he doesn't specifically say he's talking about the Good Samaritan, but it is implicit in the language. And Thatcher, well, before I get to Thatcher, Martin Luther King talked about, the day before he died, he talked about the Good Samaritan and the danger of unselfishness, the danger to us of being unselfish. Thatcher took a slightly different view, and famously she talked in 1978 about we only know of the Good Samaritan because he had money. And she's right. You can't be generous if you are too poor. Then you are a recipient of generosity. And that's an art too that requires courtesy and kindness to accept somebody else's charity. But to give charity, yes, you need to have money in the first place. But it's important not to skew this. The message of the Good Samaritan isn't about giving out of your largesse, out of your substantial resources, looking for a reward. It's about a response to need. And maybe we've forgotten that. And I think, in many ways, Rishi Sunak is a Thatcherite Good Samaritan. And he has that head on his shoulders that is trying to help. He's just inadequate. I don't think he is a supervillain. And I think that's the single image which is so unfair and projected at him. I don't think he's a supervillain. I think he's a lost boy in the wrong place. He's fallen out of the story of Peter Pan. And just because you are rich doesn't mean you are 100% a greedy psychopath and that you need to exploit other people in order to get on. This way of thinking is something that should have been jettisoned in the 1970s or the 1980s. There are people with money who exploit others for personal gain, but there's no evidence that this is what we see with the present Prime Minister. If you go back to the parable in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is talking to a lawyer. He's talking to somebody rich. And he says, go and do the same. And it's something we need to put ourselves out and to help people rather than chomping on about slogans and about boats. And I think this is where the mistake about Rishi Sunak comes in, that Rishi Sunak has so embraced the language that he's been told to use that he is now identified by the people who parade that language, who have manufactured that language. I don't think that is Rishi Sunak. And in the same way, there are people who have been identified as Good Samaritans who certainly do not merit it, like Donald Trump, who I think was identified as a Good Samaritan by George Carey, the former Archbishop of Canterbury. Well, George Carey was just a clot, really. And but there is a role for religion in society. There's a role for whatever we can do, whatever stimulates people to be better in society must be good, whether that's religion, whether that's money and the development of wealth, or whether that's sort of creating an ideal city, a new Jerusalem. It doesn't really matter what the ideology is that's behind it, as long as we leave people off in a better state than we found them. Now, I can't say that on the evidence of the facts, Rishi Sunak has succeeded in that, but I don't think that it's for want of trying, and I don't think he's fundamentally a bad man, and I would reject the suggestions that he is. I think he's surrounded by a lot of people who are bad, fundamentally bad. So I'm qualifying what I'm saying, but I think Rishi Sunak, when you look at him, he wants to do good. He may simply be one of those people who just doesn't know how.